Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our second to last Learn at Home webinar. I believe this is number 35 since May, and we're very proud of this series, which is hosted by Cooperative Extension, which is part of the University of Rhode Island, specifically the College of the Environment and Life Sciences. My name is Kate Venturini. I am an outreach programs administrator and educator for Extension, and I am thrilled and grateful and happy to have Dr. Todd Bianco and Emma Rodvien here tonight, and also Andrew Gomes, who is a 2020 Energy Fellow. Todd and Emma and Andrew will be sharing their knowledge with us around the future of New England's cleaner energy system, and I will let them do that for us. Couple things. First of all, I would be remiss without sharing with you what Cooperative Extension is, for those of you who aren't familiar. We have been around, not myself personally, but Extension itself has been around for over 100 years. And we were formed in the early 1900s to make sure that the science-based resources of the land-grant university system were made available to folks who aren't able to come to university. And so back in the day, that was farmers and homemakers, and today it includes a lot of different people working in a lot of different parts of industry and nonprofit sector policy. And so this particular program falls squarely within our energy efficiency, conservation, and renewable strategic area of focus. We also have programming in these other areas. A lot of people know us for the work we do around the food system, but our work to increase energy literacy is growing and growing, and we're really grateful to have Todd and Emma here to share their knowledge, because I think it's something that should happen more often. I would also love to thank my first mentor and dear friend, Dr. Marianne Gold, for suggesting that Todd and Emma join us tonight. So I have one request of everyone, and we are working very hard to make sure that the information we share with the public is available to everyone. We are really focusing on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in our work, especially this year and in years to come. And so if there is someone you think would benefit from this information, please do share the recording with them so that we can make sure that folks are able to access this information. So a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to Todd and Emma. First of all, on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there are 3 little dots, and if you click on them, a little box will open up that says Q&A. That is where we would love you to put in your questions, not hard ones, but some good questions for Emma and Todd to address, and Andrew also. We'll answer those at the end of the program after our 3 speakers have spoken. Also, you will get an email from WebEx, so it might not show up in your main inbox, but there is a survey in that email, and we really appreciate the responses that we receive. We use the responses to plan future programming. We also use your responses to determine whether or not these programs are effective in increasing folks' knowledge around these topics. So thank you in advance for taking just 2 minutes to fill that out when we're done. And then finally, speaking of accessibility, I did hit record on this webinar, and so it will live on our URI Cooperative Extension YouTube channel. Again, please share the link to that. We hope to close caption it for the hearing impaired if we can make that happen. So lastly, I would just share that every Tuesday, including next Tuesday at 7 p.m., we host a webinar. We've had topics ranging from protecting your family from ticks to starting seeds to grow vegetables, to making sure your well is performing properly, to now the future of New England's energy system. So we really are talking about it all, and everything that we share is rooted in science, and we take pride in that. And so if you have any questions, you can always contact us via email. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Todd Bianco and Emma Rodvien. Todd began working as the Principal Policy Associate for the Rhode Island Public Utilities Commission in 2014, focusing mainly on electric and gas utility policy. From 2012 to 2013, he served as a U.S. Geological Survey and Geological Survey of America Congressional Science Fellow in our beloved Senator Sheldon Whitehouse's office. Todd earned his Master of Science and his PhD in Geology and Geophysics from the University of Hawaii. Jealous of that, and completed a National Science Foundation postdoctoral fellowship at Brown in Providence, and I would guess that's how he landed here. And his counterpart tonight is Emma Rodvien. She is a Programming Services Officer at the Rhode Island Public Utilities Commission also. Previously, Emma worked at the PUC as a Department of Energy Solar Energy Innovators Program Fellow, studying the feedback effects of rate design and distributed energy resource adoption. Emma has a background in clean energy advocacy and holds a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Policy from the College of William and Mary. So I would say we are in really great hands. I'm gonna switch presentation power over to you, Emma, and take it away. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks a lot. It's great to be here. I want to add to that bio just a little note. Actually, I'm a Rhode Islander, and I am a graduate 2001. I was in East Hall, the physics department, and so I landed here. I can tell you right now, I'm in my bedroom, and I am no more than 1,000 feet away from 12 immediate family members. So I am a proper Rhode Islander in that sense. But thank you for having us. Another thing I should mention is usually when Emma and I get together and talk, we are figuring something out. And so I hope that doesn't happen here tonight. I hope we sort of provide information instead of try and derive information. She texted me earlier today, basically a question that said, hey, if a net metering facility is serving load, but also exporting to the grid, and I think she means in like a single month, so sometimes it's serving and sometimes it's exporting, and some of that generation ends up in the wholesale market, will that be double counting according to ISO? And I'm just not, and these are the questions that we have tried to amass knowledge to get to the bottom of. And that's a lot of what Emma and I do together is just dig into and unwind the revenue streams of renewable energy and clean energy. And Emma has become a master of it. She's really the PUC's point person on that stuff. So hopefully we get into that. But a bit of what we wanted to start with was what we do at the PUC. We can be kind of an opaque agency. It's not something that every child grows up wishing that they work on the PUC, although I believe one of our commissioner's sons does hope to work in an office someday based on her performance, which is excellent. But yeah, just to give a little background on it, and a lot of times I'll be talking about the electric system, which I think maybe might be most interesting, but the PUC has a lot of other roles. And the other thing I want to set up, the commission is a 3-member commission, and they speak through vote. So 2 of them is a majority, and they will issue orders on things that they've decided and done. And because of that, it makes it hard for staff members to say we or the commission, because even if I know individual commissioners think something, or even if I believe all of them agree, they tend to do things together in a real official sense. They're a body, not a single entity. So in that sense, when you hear us speak tonight, we'll be speaking from our own knowledge as staff and not on behalf of the commission. And so when you hear you should be thinking about, Emma and I, and we will let you know when we're talking about something the commission has done, that is the commission. But I just wanted to set that up, that is, they are this 3-member body that makes decisions together, and they hardly ever fight. But our role really has to deal with the idea of a monopoly and serving the public and industries that are affecting the public interest. And I want to start with the concept of monopoly, because monopolies can be a really negative thing, in that monopolistic behavior of a single company preventing other companies from entering a market to eliminate competition. But there are other times where, it makes sense, because if you want to think about our electric system and all the wires that are connected to all the houses around you that, go up to a transmission system and then go up to a power plant. And when you look at a lot of that, I think the basic idea is that just to get that first kilowatt hour, which is a unit of energy, like a calorie or something, just to get the first unit of energy to your house takes a massive amount of capital, money invested and spent to build all that stuff just to serve just one. And so you call that a fixed cost. To serve the second kilowatt hour is a lot cheaper, right? Because you've already spent all the money, all that capital just to get the system set up. And then you just spend a little bit more to get that additional energy, and the third kilowatt hour and the fourth kilowatt hour. And sometimes in a place, in industries like, and in a jurisdiction like Rhode Island, a single entity can serve all of the kilowatt hours necessary, or all the units of water, or all the therms of gas, or what have you. And that price, adding an extra unit of that keeps decreasing in average cost, and it keeps decreasing average cost, and you've served everybody in the market. We have enough of that thing, and average cost keeps decreasing. When you have that, a monopoly can make sense, because it's very efficient. Sometimes you need competition to drive the price down to where nobody's making sort of like extra profit, and that's the idea of efficiency coming from competition. In this sense, it can be hard for anybody to profit, and also not more efficient to have competitors. And the other thing is, related to that, but also maybe in a different dimension. I mean, you can imagine having 7 or 8 different electric wires coming into your house, and 7 or 8 electric distribution companies competing for your service, your account on their system. And think of all those wires and all the rights that they would have to dig in our streets and hang wires above our streets and things like that. And then on top of it, how would any of them really make money and stay, able to provide reliable service? So for that, sometimes companies are granted this monopoly. But because they have the monopoly, there's no competition, right? And so since this is something we need and there's nowhere else to buy it, there's that threat that they could have unreasonable business practices or charge you unreasonable rates, right? Just set your rate for electricity at $14 a kilowatt hour instead of 14 cents. And what are you going to do about it? Because of that, and actually, historically, this was something that was a problem for utilities. They couldn't get out of their way, and basically had to either risk becoming public entities, being told by the government, you have to be, this business is too important and you're price gouging, or you need to be regulated. And so regulation is what ended up happening. And so we do have public municipal utilities, publicly owned utilities, but we also have private ones. And I think a lot of folks think about the privately owned ones, and we'll be focusing on that today. And the privately owned one we'll probably be talking about most in Rhode Island will be National Grid. To keep National Grid from charging ridiculous rates, unfair rates, and to keep National Grid receiving reasonable rates themselves on their end, so that they can run a service that meets the standards and qualities that we all want, beneficial, safe, reliable service. You need something instead of a market, right? Usually, if somebody's charging too much, the market won't buy it. If somebody has a bad product, the market won't buy it. If something is, you might see nowadays, it's easier to get information on if there's a bad business practice, folks are sourcing things, how they're treating the environment, how they're treating their workers. Sometimes the market can say, I'm not going to buy that. There's no competition for somebody to come and say, the community doesn't seem to like that you provide a lot of pollution, or your costs are really high in that product. And so somebody else fills that market spot, provides a better product or at a lower price, and they get that market share and force that other competitor out. There's no competitor here. So what you need is a regulatory body to help decide what those rates are going to be. So we're the fulcrum, right? Instead of a market, on one side you have folks that need to buy something, and on the other side you have the supplier. And normally the market is what will balance those interests. Here, it's the Public Utilities Commission.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation, Todd. I think that sets up super well this idea that this space in utilities and electricity in particular serves that role of competition in the way that in a lot of other markets, the competition may help demand source the amount of supply that works for that. So in a second, Todd's going to go through actually how we do what we do at the commission. We, again, getting back to Todd's point, we meaning Todd and I. But before he does, we just wanted to take a minute to suss out a little bit more this idea of standing in for the market, and in particular, how that might color what you might have heard about the commission in the news, headlines, other sources of information. A lot of times what gets covered in terms of the commission's work is maybe a headline saying the commission approves something we don't like, right? The commission said yes to a rate hike or a rate increase or approving some degree of polluting infrastructure or something. So you might hear the commission saying yes to things you don't like. You also might often or not often hear the commission saying no to things that you like or that you imagine a lot of people like. For example, more renewable energy, fill in the blanks. There's something you like, and the commission, might issue a negative decision on that. And so just to put that in perspective of this idea of standing in for competition or being the market where there is no market in this monopoly industry, markets often say no, right? There are many cases where there's a product being offered into a market where it doesn't pass muster, right? It doesn't meet demand. It's not safe. It's not, something that there has standards for. And so there are a lot of cases where a product doesn't actually gain a market share. The market actually says no to that product. There are also many cases where there might be a product that a single person or a single body of, consumers doesn't like, but enough consumers do like it or do need it or do want it that there's still a market for that product. So just in the same way that markets sometimes say no and sometimes say yes, even if there are, consumers that fall on either side of that, the commission does it as well. This is sort of like a dorky example to think about, but Todd and I were talking about this earlier. What about flying cars? I've been thinking about it more this afternoon. What about like Google Glass? Anyone remember Google Glasses? These were products that were taught or thought of as being inevitable or the future, or that everyone was going to have and everyone was going to want. And through some real investment, there was real money invested in both of those things. There still is not a market share for those products. That's the example of the market saying no. So I just wanted to make it clear for people that if your familiarity with the commission is the commission saying no to something or the commission saying yes to something, there's a lot more underneath that, and there we actually expect that of our markets, and so that's actually what the commission is doing in issuing those types of decisions.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that was a good point. Google Glass, that's a good one. So this is the way that we went down. There are a lot of longstanding judicial precedents on how this all comes down. But a lot of what the commission is doing is when it comes to an investment by the company, we're trying to determine if it was a prudent investment. And so Google Glass might have been a prudent investment to some folks at the time, or flying cars. There's some people who think that's prudent, but then they put that on the market. The market says, I'm not going to pay for it. And so in the end, actually, it's revealed that it wasn't prudent. Those investors lost money on that. A company like let's say National Grid, they're making investments to serve power to us. And if they were to make imprudent investments, like the concept is called gold plating, that if they were to, build a substation and gold plate, that, you're stuck paying, the PUC would put that in your rates for gold to, instead of just normal steel, and put that in your rates, and you would have to pay for it. And that's not the case. There's a review of prudence to say, what should have been, what was prudent to put in place and invest in to meet the goal. Again, getting to that point of efficiency that a market would provide. It would be rare for a market to you go buy a television. If the only product on the market was a gold-plated television, then a lot of people wouldn't own televisions. That might not be a prudent investment for a company to do that. So we're driving that. The other thing is, once we understand what's prudent, you have to design rates that are gonna collect a reasonable rate for the company. So the company's investing money, it's taking on risk to do these things. And for that, they are, able to collect their investment plus a little bit extra. And they're at risk depending on how good a job they do running their company. And for that, they get to charge all of us a rate to get that back. So they are at risk. They don't always make their money, but the rates that we're trying to design give them a opportunity, or intended to, if they do a good job, recover those costs. And when I say those costs, that include investment costs, because they could be putting their money somewhere else and earning a return. The way that we do that, and so I had some interesting calls. One call was a gentleman calling about a recent rate case, an increase in the cost. And he said, they're proposing the rates will go up, let's say it was 10%. And I said, well, just so you know, that what ended up happening was the commission raised rates, 5%. And there might be a deferral of costs, and those rates might go up or down in the future. And he said, well, National Grid fooled you, because they came in and they said they needed 10%, and you guys said 5%, but they probably needed 4%. And so what you should have done, and so I said, well, actually, that's a really good point. That's not what we do. We have what we call these dockets, right? And everything we do inside a docket structure. And the idea is, we're going to get stuff on the record. National Grid doesn't come to the commission and say, how about 10%, and we negotiate with them. We're reviewing their information, and there are other parties that might be doing that. Other parties might be finding a bargaining point and saying 0, and the National Grid comes back to 8, and the other parties say 6 or something like that. But that's not the commission. The commission's not a bargaining. We are the reviewers of the evidence and final decider. Can you pull up our webpage so people can see some of this?
Yes, I can. Give me 1 second. Okay.
So you're revealing all your information. Can you scroll down right here? I just want to show people something. This is our homepage. And if you look right under that box at the center column, there's a live stream video archive. If anybody's interested to watch the process we'll talk about, or some of what we do, that's where you can click that. It'll take you to our streaming page. We have a hearing beginning tomorrow at 9:30 on energy efficiency, and so that'll be live streamed. But if you want to see how we make decisions and where that information is, like how is this? Where's the proposal? I can see it's here on our website. You go to Commission Docket. And each one of these, when a utility or something we regulate, some entity we regulate wants to do something, they have to file with the commission and ask in a very formal way for permission to do that. And the commission will determine yes or no per written order. So there'll be a review of evidence, and at the end, the commissioners will vote. 2 as a majority will determine what happens. In any one of these, you'll see they're public by nature. There are interveners who are represented by attorneys. We'll have hearings. Sometimes we'll have technical sessions that could be just information gathering. Other times we can have hearings where people are under oath and testifying under penalty of perjury. We will hear public comment. Sometimes there will be litigation between parties. And in the end, and this is what's important, in the end, all of that stuff that makes it into the record, that's allowed into the record, which again is a legal process, and it's it's actually an administrative process bound to the Administrative Procedures Act. In the end, the commission will review that information, and they can choose which information they find to be most convincing to them. I'll say in sort of lay term, but at the end of which, based on that information, they'll provide a decision. And the reason I say it that way is, I could say it a different way, they aren't allowed to sort of just pick information from somewhere else. After we've heard this and we've had these evidence, but forget about all that. I spoke to somebody else, at Cumbies, and they made a really good point, and I'm going to make my decision based on that. Or this is all the evidence that was provided, but I don't believe any of it. I'm just going to go my own way. They actually have to have an evidence-based or record-based decision. Otherwise, it can be arbitrary and capricious. And so they need to avoid that, because if they do make a decision not based on the record, it can be fairly easily appealed. And I'll say fairly easily without any kind of legal experience myself, just somebody who reads it in funny papers, that is something that can be appealed to a court. and overturned. And so that's not a result that commissioners want. And so they stick to that record. So if folks have this idea of back and forth between the company and the commission, or backroom decisions or things like that, it doesn't happen, and it can't happen by law. Now, given all that I don't know if that helps sort of understand, help folks hear a little bit of what we do. I would recommend that you watch, or we're going to go down and show you an example of a case. But the end result of all of that is usually a change to a program or a change to the way that the company might administer a program. But most of what we do is change the rates, right? And all of that ends up on a bill somewhere, and that's our end result. Putting charges up or down on your bill to collect rates to support some sort of activity. And it provides, decisions will provide National Grid or any other company that incentive to execute its business at a high quality.
Yeah, so that's a great transition to, well, what is a high quality business and what does that look like and how do we pay for it? As Todd really eloquently put it before, these are monopoly companies, and we are we're on the hook for paying that company and that company only. So what does that business look like, and how do we actually benefit from that and contribute to funding that business? So it might sound cliche, but actually the best way to understand this is to look at your bill. And I know before I got as deep in this field as I am now, I had never really read the fine print of my bill. I'll be honest, I'll keep it 100 there, but it's really helpful to go through and see how the actual rates are compiled on your bill. And we thought we could go through and add some color commentary to what those rates correspond to and the different businesses that that National Grid conducts to be able to provide the service that it's then charging you for on that bill. So I have pulled up a sample bill from National Grid's website. They have some tools available to help you understand the components of the bill, and that's the page I'm on right here. The good news is you're all with us, so we're going to help you understand it. You're going to get a voiceover in the way that you wouldn't on this website before. So just in the interest of time, I want to focus on a couple key components here. So this is a bill insert, as you would see on every monthly bill you get, and it's divided really into two primary categories. You'll see the delivery services portion of your bill and the supply services portion of your bill. For context, these are made up numbers, from National Grid's website, but they are illustrative. So up in the top corner, your total bill is around $60, and it's spread, not perfectly evenly, but it's split between, as you can see, the delivery services and the supply services. So there's a couple categories within those that we want to get into that highlight the businesses of National Grid and what you're ultimately paying for. So I'm going to start with supply services super quickly. You'll see here energy charge. Again, that makes up, roughly half of your bill. You'll see right here, this is listing a rate here, about 10 cents times a quantity, in this case 243, representative of the amount of electricity you consumed in that month, and multiplying the rate times the total gets you the component that you pay for. So supply services, let's dive into what that means. I think it's natural when you think about electricity to synonymize that with the power plants that create that electricity, right? Electricity needs to be generated, that's what we pay for. That is what supply services cover. It covers the power plants, the fuel inputs to those power plants, the operations and maintenance. Now, interestingly enough though, National Grid does not participate there as their business. National Grid does not own power plants. It does not actually generate any of that power. What it does is, on behalf of the customers that it serves electricity to, through the form of what we call standard offer service, it's going to go out and procure electricity for those customers from what we have in this region called a wholesale market. And if those of you who might have attended, I think it was last week's lecture with ISO New England, that is the wholesale market that actually settles generation for the amount of demand in the region. National Grid is a customer there, purchases on behalf of us, the end use customer, and bills us. So this 10-cent rate that you see here is not actually National Grid's core business. That's a service they're providing to us, on our behalf. Now, how National Grid really truly runs its business and makes its money lies in this section above called delivery services. And it's actually broken down into some further components there. I'm going to highlight three in particular that you might see listed underneath: transmission, distribution, and something that Todd and I kind of colloquially call programs. So let's start with transmission. We have the idea of generating electricity, the power plants that spin the turbines, or the wind farms that collect the wind, or the solar farms that collect the solar radiation and generate electricity. That electricity has to be moved to the customer, moved to where the customer uses it. So the transmission of electricity over those long distances on those big wires, those high voltage long distance wires, is what we in the industry call transmission. And National Grid actually does own a transmission business. In fact, it's one of the biggest transmission businesses in New England. It's almost 9,000 miles of transmission wires. So what we mean by National Grid invests in and runs this business is that National Grid, through its transmission arm, is able to identify or predict demand, the need for this type of service, invest in that type of service, make a return on that type of service, and ultimately charge customers for that wing of its business. And so this is what you see when you see about a 3-cent transmission charge on your bill. Again, I'm just looking at the line for transmission, and that is a business that National Grid has a stake in, and that appears on your bill that you contribute to covering the cost of. Now on to distribution. So you've got the electricity that's generated by a power plant somewhere, that's moved across National Grid and other transmission owners' wires to the local network. And then it has to actually be distributed and brought into your home or into your business or to your coffee pot or toaster. And that's what we call distribution. So it's all the local poles and wires and transformers and substations that you see in the area. And that is one of the bigger, components of National Grid's business. They own that infrastructure, they invest in that infrastructure, and with approval by the commission, they make a return on that infrastructure. So that is really one of the bread and butter components. And that appears on your bill. That's something you pay for every month through the form of the customer charge here, $6 a month, regardless of how much you use, and the distribution energy charge, which is covering a similar portion of the distribution system costs, but in a volumetric form, meaning that it appears as a rate that's linked to ultimately how much electricity you use over a billing period. So those are primary categories. I want to quickly go through this idea of programs, though, and set Todd up to give some really interesting examples of renewable energy programs, because I feel like that might be what this audience is most looking forward to. So all the remainder of these other charges fall into this category, like I mentioned, that we kind of refer to as programs. So in addition to running its distribution and transmission businesses, National Grid is directed by state law to be the administrator of programs that help the state achieve different energy policy goals. So you'll see, for example, energy efficiency, renewable energy. I'll explain what that means here in a second. But in these cases, National Grid has been legislated to run programs to achieve those goals. And in some cases, it makes money by running those programs. In other cases, it's not exactly making money. It's administering the programs and just simply recovering costs from customers. In either of those cases, though, it's going to set a budget for running that program and achieving the goals that it's been told to achieve or directed to achieve. It's going to spread out those costs over the amount that it predicts it's going to sell. And that's how we get these rates here that correspond to the programs themselves. So this might be, new, or this might be surprising. I know I was certainly surprised to learn how much is encompassed by these program charges, but every month that you pay your bill, you're actually contributing to the energy efficiency fund, or something that I wanted to explain in quick detail, the renewable energy distribution charge, which actually covers the costs of 2 programs in Rhode Island that you might have heard of. They tend to be pretty high profile programs. Net metering, which is my one true love as an area of research, and then the program called long-term contracts, which covers the cost of National Grid entering into contracts with renewable resources and sourcing power and renewableness from those facilities. You might have heard of the Block Island Wind Farm. That is covered by the long-term contract program. So the point we want to make here is you pay your bill, you pay into these charges. If you're thinking, what does National do? What can I do more to support renewable energy? You're supporting it right now by paying these bills, and the more you dig into the bills, the more you can see the type of program administration that National Grid does to achieve our clean energy goals.
I missed something in there too, Emma. And by the way, I thank you for teaching me something about how long National Grid's transmission system is. In describing what we do and how you end up with these charges, you might say, well, I never got a chance to say about these charges, or maybe you have and you've provided public comment and the rate changes happen anyway, and you're super frustrated, or maybe something happened and you're happy it worked out but don't understand why. I described other parties other than National Grid or some utility. That's who files the proposal. But in any given case, other parties can establish formal participation. And so you'll see often the Office of Energy Resources, a state agency, arguing and looking out for state policy and alignment of proposals with state policy. We've had Lieutenant Governor McKee intervene on behalf of small businesses. We've had the Navy and Walmart and Amtrak as really particular types of large and specialized users intervene. The George Wiley Center will intervene often on behalf of low and moderate income and high energy burden customers. In all of that, you say, well, maybe you do or don't fall into any of those groups. What those groups are doing is arguing on behalf of a very particular interest. There's another agency that is in the same building as ours called the Division of Public Utilities and Carriers, and they will vet all of National Grid's proposals, or anybody's proposals. They're always a party in every case we have, every docket that the PUC has. The division is always a public party. And in a lot of cases, they'll take a position, in favor or in negotiation with or in opposition of the proposal to improve that. And so that is who is sort of looking out for ratepayers and being an advocate for ratepayers. I'm not saying that the Utilities Commission themselves, that they don't care or think about ratepayers. I'm just saying that is the body properly situated to argue on behalf of and make a case on behalf of all ratepayers, which includes, a lot of different classes, all the way down to, low usage residential customers up to the Navy and larger. So maybe there's an example of regulation in action. Often when we're talking about rate case, National Grid trying to increase their revenue because they've built out their system and need to get a return on that. But like we said, we think you're more interested in some of the programs that you might want to know about. And an example of that is the contracting program. So National Grid, you might have heard recently, signed a contract a couple of years ago for a large offshore wind farm. It's called Revolution Wind. They signed that contract, and it's not just out of the goodness of their hearts, right? They expect to, when that contract that they have to pay for that energy, that cost will go on your bill, as Emma showed, in that, most likely in that renewable energy distribution charge. To the extent that they need to pay for that contract because it doesn't make money by itself, they will collect it there. Should the contract be profitable for them, that they bought low and sold high, that's how they'll give you back the profits of that. They won't keep that themselves. So here it is. It was docket 4929. So our dockets are all just numbered, in seriatim, I guess we can call it. So the docket after this, whatever just happened to get filed next, was docket 4930. In here, National Grid files. And Emma, can you click on National Grid's transmittal letter? This is, just to give people a feel of it's very tangible. If you want, you can read this. This is a letter from National Grid's outside attorney, Jack Habib, to our clerk, Luli Massaro, who we love, but who also is very difficult to get good docket numbers from sometimes. So if you want to wonder why this isn't docket 4,000 or something like that, that's because Luli is very strict on her docket numbers, but we do love her.
Very so.
But in here, National Grid begins to make its case. This first thing you'll see is a petition for protective treatment because they have really sensitive commercial information. This was a bid between this company, Deepwater Wind at the time, to supply power, and they wanted to protect that information. They didn't want everybody to know what they were willing to take for this massive offshore wind farm. Emma, if you could go back, it's supported by what we call schedules. There's evidence here to meet what we, and Emma, if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see a reference here to the Affordable Clean Energy and Security Act at the very top. What National Grid's telling us is this is the statute, this is the legal statute that, the legal standard we believe we can file this under. And in there, if you go to Rhode Island general laws and read this section that they're referring to, it does explain that National Grid's allowed to contract for renewable energy And it has to meet certain standards. I don't know what all of them are right off the top of my head. I probably should, but commercially reasonable, that the benefits exceed the costs, that it is a renewable project, that negotiations were commercially reasonable, I think, is another one. And so each one of those is a standard that the commission must find to be, right? After reviewing all of the evidence in the case, they must say, yes, it was commercially reasonable. Yes, the benefits outweigh the cost. Yes, in some cases, the value of the energy was cheaper than energy we could buy on the market. That's a standard sometimes. Emma, if you go back one, so that's their attempt to do it. They do it by having witnesses. So you can see in here, they have testimony from two qualified experts, Tim Brennan and Corinne DiDomenico. And then what you'll see below that is, the commission providing notices to other state agencies. The particular law that National Grid filed this under required these agencies to provide opinions about certain issues, like how this would affect the economy to commerce, how this would affect states' environment and greenhouse gas emissions, DEM. Another thing you'll see right below that is motions to intervene. So the Office of Energy Resources intervened. They wanted to be a party. And Deepwater Wind, the company that was selling the power to National Grid, they also wanted to be a party. And you'll see Conservation Law Foundation, a well-known and effective environmental law firm, and they intervened. If you'll scroll down further, you'll see the Division of Public Utilities and Carriers. They don't have to intervene, they're automatic. And they've also provided memoranda and testimony from experts on this. The final thing I want to highlight is that there's a bunch of public comment, which is also considered. And then if you scroll down, you'll start to see these are all the questions that the Public Utilities Commission and staff like Emma and I ask to all the different parties. We had a lot of questions, right? So people have spent a year or more working on this decision. The commission hasn't spent any time working on this decision. We haven't had any involvement in this. And so at that point, even if everybody agrees, it arrives at the commission and the commissioners before they agree to a $1 billion contract with potentially billions more in benefits, they want to make sure they understand everything that's happening and vet everything. And so we ask a lot of questions. We would do this in any case. So if it was a case to increase gas costs or a case to sign a contract for clean power, we ask a lot of questions to make sure everything's been vetted. And that's what we did here. All of these become evidence in the final decision. In the end, some of the things that the commission does is, determine what costs and benefits matter. And the commission, the Rhode Island Commission, is sort of the first in the nation to look at all state policy, not just its energy policy, get it as cheap as possible no matter what, but all of its state policy, all the state policy that says, listen, climate matters, the economy matters, public health matters, public welfare matters, as well as the ability to have, an economic and efficient kilowatt hour charge. That also matters. We take all of that together to think about whether or not the benefits of the proposal outweigh the cost of the proposal. But we also do other things, like determine whether or not ratepayers' risk in supporting that is too high compared to their reward. At the end of this decision, the PUC found that this contract proposed by National Grid did meet all of the requirements. Another thing that was decided here too, by the way, was that National Grid filed this, they asked for what they described as remuneration. So for every dollar that they were going to ask ratepayers to pay for the contract price, they were going to collect 1.75 cents as remuneration to them. That would be profit to National Grid. That was actually rejected. So while the contract was approved, the commission asked a lot of questions about the propriety of allowing National Grid to earn what could be deemed as incentive or remuneration, but basically a profit for signing that contract, and the commission denied it. And that was something that actually the division made a case about. They said, this is a good contract, we should go for it, it's beneficial to Rhode Island, but the evidence doesn't bear out allowing National Grid to have that. Very interesting decision. It was great to have front row seats to. These are the types of things that the commission does. Now, in that, you say, hey, that was a great contract. If you're in favor of renewable energy, say more of that, Public Utilities Commission. Why don't you do more of that? And the thing is, we don't make the proposals. We also don't necessarily just sit on our heels and do nothing. We're trying to make a regulatory process and regulatory direction, but it's really up to other people to come up with proposals. Sometimes, and I don't know if I'm stepping on your toes with this, if you were going to talk about it, but sometimes it's the legislature. The legislature says, you will do this, National Grid. You will file a PUC plan to contract for X megawatt hours or megawatts or what have you. And they do, and they make a proposal, but then the legislature leaves it to the commission to determine if that's worth passing. That's sort of the traditional, if that the plan itself is worth proposing, but they leave it to the commission to determine if National Grid has met their defined standards. So given that, you might hear more about that in the future. The state is attempting to become 100% renewable. That's an effort led by the Office of Energy Resources at the direction of the governor. What you might hear is, well, wait, didn't we buy all this renewable power? I thought we were pretty close to being renewable, or I buy energy and they tell me I'm 100% renewable, or I net meter, so I must be 100% renewable. What's interesting about that is when you have power generated, if you're a renewable generator, or really any generator, when you generate power, you kind of generate two assets. In New England, it's allowed, in a lot of other places. You have the energy, but you also have this renewableness factor. And if you register with the state of Rhode Island, we allow you to, when you generate that megawatt hour of energy, we also allow you to basically generate like a VIN, right? You generate a number that says this megawatt hour was renewable, and it's associated with this certificate, with this number that you can now trade. So if somebody wants to buy the energy, they can buy it. And if they want to buy the renewableness, they can buy that separately. And so what National Grid does with this contract, should this facility get built, they'll take all the power that comes, all that energy, and they'll immediately sell it into the wholesale market. At the same time, they're buying energy and other companies buying energy to sell to you. So National Grid at the same time is selling energy into the market and immediately buying it back at a different price. And sometimes that price is lower, and so we make money as ratepayers. And sometimes they're buying it back at a higher price. Actually, most typically they buy it back at a much higher price, and that's why renewable energy distribution charges is fairly significant, about a penny. The other thing they do is they'll take all of the renewableness, all those renewable certificates, and for every megawatt hour, which is 1,000 kilowatt hours, it's like if you ran your microwave is about a megawatt of power, so if you run that for an hour, every one of those certificates, for every megawatt hour, you get one of those certificates. They also are going to sell that into the market. Other people need them to meet targets, requirements, that something that your energy be 20% renewable or 50% renewable, whatever that is. At the same time, they're also, retiring RECs to meet their requirements of being renewable. If you take that renewable asset and you sell it, you no longer have it, and so you can't say you're 100% renewable. And so this facility will only increase Rhode Island's renewableness if we retire those certificates. And that is actually, something that is defined by, when would you do that? Defined by what we call the renewable energy standard. Something that is actually within the commission's jurisdiction. We don't set the standard, we just make sure there's compliance with it. The other thing you might say is, okay, that's interesting, you're signing contract. I see that charge on my bill for, about 1.2 cents. Why does the Public Utilities Commission just do more net metering? Because I hear net metering, that's free energy, and let's just do more of that. And the PUC, you should order that just more of that be done. And so let's go, Emma, as the net metering expert, and I'm sure you want to, Rare to talk about this to close it out, but talk a little bit about net metering and, why that's not maybe just the commission just does it.
Yes, great. So, we've hopefully by now left the impression that the commission is, not a procurement agency. It's not a legislature or a body that makes, directs the company to invest as it does, or even sets demand. The commission is reviewing, especially in the case of these programs like a net metering or a long-term contracting, as Todd just greatly explained, the role of the commission is to review and to analyze, and in some unique cases to exert rate making authority over how the costs of that program do flow to customers and how the benefits might, change and flow to customers as well. But, the thing that we want to highlight in the context of net metering, because it is something that we hear about a lot, in the news as the state sees more net metering grow, is, why doesn't the commission do more? Why doesn't the commission do more? The commission doesn't have a role to do more or less on net metering, just simply because the commission is not the one who's building the solar facilities or interconnecting the solar facilities. If we want to think about that language of doing something on net metering, it's important to note the legislature did. The legislature did a lot on net metering by establishing it many years ago. And because it's a program, again, not sort of not a distribution system with all the poles and all the wires that require constant investment or constant decisions about where to spend money, since it's not that type of program, and rather it's something that the utility allows to happen on its system, the commission reviews information about that program as it comes to it, and like I said before, might exert some control over what the cost of that program looks like through some rate making treatments. Again, what we do is kind of play in the weeds of how costs are borne and how they're recovered from ratepayers. I also think it's kind of a shameless plug to talk about some of the research I've been doing for 2 years. So as they said at the top, I've been working before this current role at the commission, doing a pretty large research project into some of what the question of why don't we do more net metering could look like. And what I've been trying to research is, well, how much net metering will get done, not by the commission, but by the developers who build those resources and by the customers who invest in them, and trying to measure what that future might look like, how much might be developed under some different scenarios. So the energy system's constantly changing, our rates are constantly changing, demand on the system is changing, customer appetite is changing. So I've been working really closely with Todd on a really fun research project trying to put some guardrails on that question of how much might get done. But that being said, it's a really important message to take home that the commission does not do this. The commission does not do net metering. Net metering is a choice that customers make to invest in a resource provided by a developer. The last thing that I'll end on, though, is that we do all pay for it in the same way Todd was talking about the long-term contracting program and some of the other programs that we ran through earlier. This is one energy system and one electric grid, and we pay for it all. We pay for these programs, whether you net meter or not, whether you are the one who signed on the dotted line and made the contract with Deepwater Wind or not. We're all paying to support these resources through those different programmatic charges on our bill. So, if you're interested in what the commission exerts and the power that we exert in this space, it's a lot of questions. Like Todd said, we ask a lot of questions about how costs flow, how benefits are put on the system, who pays for that, how that might change, what are there uncertainties that we should be foreseeing or asking ourselves. That's the work that we do. It's really in the weeds, it's really nitty gritty, but it's really important to making sure we achieve our goals in a cost-effective manner.
I think Andrew now might be able to talk a little bit about doing net metering if he is ready. I know we've used up a lot of time, but I've heard some of what you have to say, Andrew, and it is really useful information on getting involved in some of these programs and making those decisions yourself.
Yeah, and let me jump in and give Andrew a proper introduction here. We're really looking forward to some of the calls to action that he's going to share with us. So Andrew Gomes is a senior studying electrical engineering at URI. He is representing proudly the 2020 Energy Fellows, and he is currently interning at Creative Environment Corps in Cranston.
All right, thank you, Emma. Do I have sharing privileges?
You do now.
All right. Let's see, are we all ready with that? All set? All right. Good evening, everyone. As Emma said, my name is Andrew Gomes. I am a 2020 URI Energy Fellow, currently interning at Creative Environment Corps, and tonight I'll be discussing our calls to action. Our calls to action run as follow: efficiency before new technology, solar and batteries, are they right for you, and donating to the Good Neighbor Energy Fund. First and foremost, efficiency before new technology. This entails improving your home's building envelope. One way in doing so is by doing a home energy assessment. According to the Department of Energy, a home energy assessment helps determine how much energy is being consumed by your household, where the energy is being lost in said household, and which areas and fixes should be prioritized to increase efficiency and comfort. The two main components to a home energy assessment are the auditor and the audit. The role of the auditor is that they conduct a room-to-room examination detailing the problem areas in your household, where they'll stage various tests with equipment such as blower doors and infrared cameras, as shown in the graphics below. The audit is normally free, and based on your home energy assessment, any home improvements can be subsidized or come at a reduced cost. More details on that in the next slide. Currently, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, National Grid is conducting no-cost live virtual discussions with energy specialists to save money and energy, of course, because face-to-face home energy assessments cannot be conducted. The plan that energy specialists normally come up with include equipment rebates, no-cost products, 0% financing, more than 75% off your approved installation, and air sealing up to $15,000. To get in contact with one of these energy specialists, first, you'll call the number provided on the screen, where you will work with the energy specialist to find personalized opportunities for yourself in your home. From there, you will receive products that come at no cost and are energy efficient, such as light bulbs. These products will be shipped to your house directly for you to install. And as said before, you're able to receive 75% off the approved installation and air sealing up to $15,000, plus additional rebates off of or towards qualifying heating, cooling, and water heating equipment. The next call to action, solar and batteries, are they right for you? Tonight I'll be discussing 3 different solar assessment tools. These tools are useful to simulate what the short and long-term cost of solar panels will be. The first one I'll be talking about is PV Watts Calculator. The home screen is shown below. The first step would be to enter the address of the home or business, as shown there on screen. From there, you will be brought to this page right here, where it will show the latitude and longitude of the inputted distance, as well as the inputted location, and the distance to the nearest site grid cell. From there, you will be taken to this page, where you can modify the inputs for your household or business to run a simulation on the amount of money that you can save per month. The icons next to each parameter give detailed descriptions on what each parameter represents. And from there, you'll be brought to this page where it gives a detailed breakdown on how many kilowatt hours are being generated on average per year, as well as the solar exposure and the value of that exposure. As you can see below, there is an option to find a local installer near you. The next solar assessment tool I'll be talking about this evening is SunNumber. SunNumber gives an estimated cost of the solar panels based on factors such as your location, the style of roofing, power usage, local pricing, your utility provider, and the cost of the provider. One of the nifty little features that's provided on the SunNumber page is that it provides little paragraphs on different information on solar panels. Right here on this slide, you can see the average solar panel cost in each state in 2020. I decided to show Rhode Island as well as the surrounding states and my home, New Jersey. The columns to the right of each state represent the average cost per watt for the solar panels, as well as the average installation cost for the solar panels. Here are just some more examples on the website. Not limited to this, it also includes the cost of system size in 2020, the cost of the best brands of 2020, and by best size, we mean the 20 most frequently installed residential solar panels, as well as charts detailing the cost besides equipment installation. For SunNumber, you will have to verify your residency. It will ask for your email address and your phone number. On this slide, I am showcasing my household back home in New Jersey. It simulates how many solar panels can be installed on your rooftop, and it will provide figures on what the average increase in home value is for installing these solar panels, as well as how your savings on your electric bill over the next 25 years. The third and final solar assessment tool I'll talk about this evening is Project Sunroof. Project Sunroof uses Google Earth imagery to analyze your roof shape as well as local weather patterns to create a personalized solar plan. From here, you will adjust the the billing price for your average electric bill, and it'll give the recommended number of solar panels for your household. From there, you're able to compare the pricing of loans, leasing, and the purchasing options towards, or based on these results, I should say. Again, using my house back in New Jersey, this is showcasing my neighborhood as well. You can see in the top figure, it gives the total number of hours of usable sunlight per year based on your location and what the estimated cost of savings would be over the next 20 years. The bottom left figure, as you can see, you're able to adjust what your average monthly electric bill is, and depending on that, it'll give the recommended solar installation size, as well as what your potential environmental impact is. To the right, on the bottom right, I should say, it gives you the option to learn how to finance your solar panels based on these buying, leasing, and loaning options. The next topic for solar and batteries is choosing a contractor. We recommend using Energy Sage. Energy Sage shows people in your area who have also gotten quotes and gives the proposed payback period over a 20-year average, as well as different financing options. On this slide right here, it is shown after you input your zip code. On the left sidebar, you have to input what your property address is, what the type of property it is, as well as your first and last name, as well as your email address, and from there you're able to receive the quote. And our third and final call to action this evening is donating to Energy Fund. Good Neighbor Energy Fund is run through United Way of Rhode Island, and for the past 30 years, they have helped to provide assistance to Rhode Island families who haven't been able to meet their current energy expenses due to financial difficulty. Especially given the circumstances of this year, it is highly appreciated if you donate. Thank you everyone for your time. If you have any questions, please leave it in the bubble below.
Thank you, Andrew. I remain totally enamored by our energy fellows who are so well-spoken. And I think that was a great round off to Todd and Emma's conversation about how the PUC works. There's certainly a lot to chew on there. We do have time for a couple questions, and we have a couple questions. So I will, let's see, I think we'll go with Adam's first. Adam, thanks for being here again. So Adam says some of the benefits in terms of environmental and societal benefits of a program like net metering may be more intangible or difficult to quantify than the costs to ratepayers or utilities. How does the PUC weigh this when considering cost and benefit in relevant decisions?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll let Todd explain some of the maybe decisions beyond net metering, but just for the case of net metering, I mean, it is true that there's a broad suite of benefits and a broad suite of costs, and it's important to take those all into consideration. Unfortunately, with something like net metering, because as we explained earlier, the net metering program is administered as just something that gets filed with the commission as part of a broader, what we call our annual retail rate filing, where the commission is just sort of approving the rate, which is designed to recover the cost from the most recent year of net metering and put it into rates and sort of get on with things. Doesn't go through the same review process as a proposed rate case where you're paying more for expanding the distribution system or approving a particular contract, as Todd walked us through earlier. So the specific case of net metering doesn't actually require specific weighing of costs and benefits every year that it comes across the commission's desk for approval. Again, it's rolled into a bigger suite of rate increases that get approved on their face. So in that case, it's not as relevant to net metering as it is to maybe some of the other types of approvals that, Todd, you might want to tackle in a bigger approval. How do those benefits and costs get weighed? Maybe possibly through a framework. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder. No, but let's stretch a little though. I mean, there could be a net metering instance, I would say, that could, cause the PUC, because as you alluded to, we have some rate making authority to do something. I know that the credit is set that way, but I could see, a lot of instances where we could maybe affect that if there were a proposal and need to consider those other costs and benefits. But what's important is it's not unique to net metering if that were the case, right? If there were some way that this were coming up in net metering, the way the PUC does it, back in, Actually, I don't know when. I'm not going to pretend I remember the year, but it wasn't that long ago because I worked at the PUC. They had a docket called Docket 4600. And in Docket 4600, the PUC got as many stakeholders as they could get together that were interested and qualified. And they went through state policy and enumerated, called out all of the policies that need to be considered when you're weighing benefits and costs. Now, this isn't always decisional, right? Like if the benefits outweigh the cost of something, there's still other things like, I don't know, the benefit of going to college probably outweighs the cost, but sometimes you don't have, that you got to make other investments, right? You've got to pay your current bills or your job. So it's not worth going to school at this point. It's sort of the same thing. Like the PUC is looking for instances where benefits outweigh costs and then finding out if that makes that, now is there a business case? Does it make sense to go and make that investment? Is it right for ratepayers? Is this the right place to put those charges and make that investment? The PUC kind of standardized that by saying, in any case we look at, there's like 36 costs and benefits, and they can be added to where the PUC will at least say, is this a potential cost or benefit? Is this a potential cost or benefit? And parties, in fact, National Grid or the proponent actually has to, in their filing, explain whether or not it is or isn't, because the PUC is basically saying, to prove your case, we're going to need that information up front. If it's a matter of benefits and costs, this is the way we're going to look at it. And so the PUC, being a staff of 7, we don't have the ability to necessarily show parties literally how to do math to do this, right? We're not those experts. We hope that process gets better and better because you say they're really hard to quantify numbers, and maybe there's a future where the PUC finds a way to help get those numbers out. But at least at this point, everyone has the ability to make their case, right? So there were, years ago, you might not have been able to say, hey, the benefit of carbon here is $100 a ton. Now you can, and you can bring an expert to testify and say it's $100 a ton. And the PUC, somebody could litigate that and say it's $0 a ton or negative $100 a ton, which would be really radical, but I'm sure there's folks out there. So it can be considered. And in fact, those benefits and costs in the 4600, we call it the Rhode Island test or the Rhode Island benefit cost framework, are available. People can see them online in that docket, on that docket page we showed you. And should benefits and costs be part of the decision-making standard, that the law says benefits minus outweigh costs, the PUC would use that to make that finding.
I believe that's when you drop the mic. So this is a great question to round out the evening with, and I know, Todd, you were very involved in this. So Kaylin, my beloved colleague, is asking, what was the PUC's role in the decision on the Barville power plant, specifically the role of the PUC? I think folks probably are familiar with the proposal, but let's talk a little bit about that for us.
Sure. This is really what great timing, because Emma was previously our a fellow for us, from DOE, but now she's an employee. And pretty soon Emma gets to be the coordinator of the siting board, which is a torch that I cannot wait to pass. Although I do love all the folks, at Barville and even at Invenergy. It was a heck of a ride to be, again, good front row seats for that. So yes, in my role as the policy person for the PUC, I also served as the coordinator for the Energy Facility Siting Board. The role for the PUC, and this is statutory, there's a couple things that need to be findings that need to be made, and the Siting Board's lawyer is probably on still, and so she's probably watching this. I hope I don't follow this up, but basically there needs to be the company needs to prove need. It's their case. Nobody else is proving it. Invenergy had to prove that the resource was needed, and that it was not going to be, environmentally harmful, and that it was going to be able to produce energy at the, reasonable, efficient cost. They also had to prove that it enhanced the socioeconomic fabric of the state, and and that if it proposed a risk to the health or welfare of the state, that approving it was worth doing it because there was some other greater need. Now, the most important thing, and so I don't have those right, but it's 4298. So if you want to read them, it's 4298-10, probably, Rhode Island General. It's that first one. How do you decide need? And what the state decided was we won't have the board do every single one of these things because those cases are huge. We'll ask other agencies to give opinions on that. And the PUC's job is to make an opinion on cost and need. is this a reasonable cost for the facility? And is the facility literally needed? And they had a docket for that. I can't remember what the docket number was. It's probably 45 something, but it was a docket. They ran that whole case, and that opinion, that decision that they made, which wasn't voted on because actually we only had one commissioner available, filed that opinion with the citing board, and that became a piece of evidence in the citing board's case when they said, okay, the PUC already looked at the evidence and they said it is or isn't needed. In the end, the case went on so long that the facts of that became out of date, and the final decision was the citing board, which they're allowed to do anyway, even if it wasn't out of date, overruled the PUC's opinion. The facts had changed so much that the citing board found that, of course, the facility was not needed, and that is why the facility was rejected.
I followed that peripherally, and it was very interesting, especially because I'm from that part of the state originally. So really interesting stuff. Okay, I lied. We do have one more question. This will be the last one from our friend Pamela, who says, asking, is the indirect or hidden cost of negative environmental impact and health due to energy sources based on fossil fuel burning considered in your benefit cost or the benefit cost analysis? I can read that again if you need me to, but.
First of all, they are in the framework. It is incumbent upon somebody else to make the case. I can tell you that in National Grid's proposals, because actually the way that they're regulated now, and people may have a hard time understanding this, a lot of those programs benefit National Grid. They make more money and they do better when we have renewable programs and efficiency. That brings in, actually, that's how they make money. And some of those programs give them a profit. Some of the contracts they sign bring them a profit. And so they want to make the best case possible to get those approved. And so they do put in an evidence to the commission the full cost of climate change to the extent that they believe it's provable, which really is somewhere around $100 a ton in their filings typically of carbon dioxide. So pretty high. That's the societal cost. They put in things like public health benefits for SOx and NOx and other societal benefits, because they really do. They benefit when they prove those cases on some of those programs. Absolutely, it's considered, and it's one of the things that kind of puts Rhode Island out there, is that we consider it in all of our decisions for that electric business when it's going to affect rates. Now, it isn't always the only thing we decide on, but it is always available to be in the case and part of that decision on whether or not the benefits exceed the costs.
Well, my biggest take home is that I am really grateful that smart people like you, Dr. Bianco, and you, Emma, are helping make these really tough decisions. And I think in terms of, the transformation of where we need to go, and how we're going to get there, it's going to take brilliant minds like yours and Andrew's when he is done with school. So thanks to all three of you for participating. We really appreciate this. And I just remind everyone who's here and who's has any friends who might be interested, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the URI Cooperative Extension YouTube channel. I hope everyone has a happy holiday, and we do have one more session next week, actually, on becoming a community first responder to prevent opioid overdose. So please spread the word about that. Tuesday, December 15th.
You just made me feel
7.
so insignificant.
Oh, I know. Lots of challenging topics to discuss, but this was great, and I think I will watch it again just to make sure I'm really taking your points. Thanks so much, all of you. Andrew, great job. You make us proud. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.